This podcast is not a source of legal advice. No two legal cases are the same. Contact an attorney if you require legal assistance.
Welcome to the Mighty Merp podcast. I'm here with Kristin Lis, who is a family law attorney, has been practicing about 15 years, and we're going to talk about her journey through the legal practice from when she was a young attorney to how she has shifted and adjusted her career to make sure that she has a successful career and a successful, happy life outside lawyering. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. I know we texted and talked a little bit about having a conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time today to join me on the Mighty Merp podcast. I do not know if you've listened to the Mighty Merp podcast, but I always like to start the first question with my guest, say, tell me your origin story. Where did you grow up? Tell me a little bit about your family. And also, did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer?
That's great. So I grew up in Philadelphia. I am the oldest of three daughters to my parents. My parents are still together. They've been married for 48 years now, which is, kind of ironic that I'm a divorce lawyer. And my two sisters, they both live different state than me. I reside in Florida now, though I am solely a New Jersey divorce attorney. My one sister lives in Connecticut, the other one lives in Jersey. I have two nieces, and I grew up in a Catholic family. Went to Catholic school K through 12, then went to a Christian university. Just wanted to be a teacher. I was really passionate about teaching. Got my degree in elementary and special education, and taught for 7 years. And I just reached this point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is really difficult. Not that I'm afraid of a challenge. Clearly, I went into law, which is very challenging. I just didn't feel like I was satisfied with the direction my life was taking. I was working really, really hard to be really, really poor. And I wanted to kind of get out of that cycle. I wanted to get out of the city. And I decided to go to law school and do an entire shift. Initially, I thought I would get into education law because of that overlap there. And as luck would have it, we had an amazing economic downturn in 2008-ish, 2009. So I graduated in the worst economy ever. So rather than, people just throwing offers at new graduates from law school with their whole future in their hands, law firms and even prosecutors and public defenders' offices were laying people off, which was absolutely terrifying when you graduate with 6 figures of student loan debt and still have your undergrad. So
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you just so I backtrack a little. I have about 3 questions for you. What did you teach when you were teaching?
So I taught special ed. I first taught with 3rd and 4th graders, and I was like, this is cute, but a couple of my kids were eating glue. So I was like, let me do something a little different. So I tried middle school, and that was good. But the middle school is they're very cranky. Any parent that's listening right now will say, I will easily trade the diapers for the cranky tweens. And then I ended up in teaching high school in South Jersey. And I did run into some of my students from there before when I was at the Camden County Prosecutor's Office, and they would wave to me for their handcuffs. So that was a sad story. I just didn't really feel like we were doing our students a great justice. We're missing a lot of the mark in our educational system. And by insisting that every student is destined for community college or college, we're losing that opportunity to teach young students how to support themselves, get them involved in a trade, teach them some marketable skill, something that they can do other than go out and sell drugs, which is, really prevalent in South Jersey.
Yes, that is all true. So you went from teaching. Did someone inspire you to go to law school, or did you just decide that was the route? Where'd you go to undergrad? Where'd you go to law school? because the graduating with the significant loan debt or loan issue is possibly
Yeah.
dependent as well on the law school that you chose at the time. Uh,
Right.
Probably
So,
believing you were going to make more money as a lawyer
oh,
than as a teacher.
exactly. We were told, oh, you go to law school, you're going to graduate, you're going to start making $100,000 a year. False. So I went to undergrad at LaSalle University in Philly, and I did get some academic scholarships there, but chose to live on campus, despite the fact it was about 15 minutes away from my home growing up, because I wanted that college experience. And LaSalle was one of the best schools, and I believe is still a very good school for education. So I was happy I went there. And then during when I was teaching, we had friends of the family who were a lawyer, and they kept on saying things like, you should just go to law school. You should go to this. Well, during the course of my teaching, there were some legal issues that came up with some of my students. And through the course of my teaching career and prior to becoming a teacher, had some legal circumstances arise. As teachers were mandatory reporters of child abuse, things like that. And I saw that there was a lot of injustice, and I thought, I think I'd like to go be a special education lawyer. So that kind of prompted me to get there. But then once I had that degree in hand, things changed a lot. And so I'm not appearing today as a Kristin Lis special education lawyer. I'm appearing Kristin Lis divorce lawyer. So there's quite a
Right.
leap there.
I'm sorry, did I miss it? Where did you go to law school?
I went to law school at Rutgers University in Camden.
Great.
And I commuted, I lived with my parents and tried to, cut costs as best as I could. But, it's a big investment into your education, and then, interest happens.
So I see that you clerked for Judge Baker, who
did.
I'm sure that you learned a lot and had a lot of fun at the same time with Judge Baker. Was he in family division when you clerked for him?
Yes. So in 2008, I interviewed with probably 9 or 10 judges. And one of those judges was Judge Baker. I drove to Atlantic City from Camden and had a great conversation with him in his chambers on Bacharach Boulevard in Atlantic City. And the next day, I got a call and he offered me the position. At that point, I kind of had my heart set on being a prosecutor at the Camden County Prosecutor's Office, where I had interned and had some great experiences on my feet there. And I gave them a call, and they told me that they were not planning on bringing in a new class of prosecutors that year, 2009. They, in fact, were faced with the decision to begin laying people off. Again, going back to the pretty awful economy in 2008, 2009, the housing market crisis. That was devastating to me. And I said, well, thankfully, I have this opportunity for a clerkship. I'll do that. And even during my clerkship, I applied with prosecutor's office. I kept on running into the same thing. Like, those doors were not open to me. And now I look back and I'm glad they weren't, because this route was really, I think, destined for me. Sitting in the courtroom, I looked around and I said, Judge, where are all the young attorneys at? Where are they? And he's like, well, when we got these ones who are going to be retiring a couple years, and we do have these 3 young attorneys, but there just really wasn't interest in family law, and it's a huge need. So as those people have retired, or as those people have become judges, there haven't been a great number of family law attorneys stepping into those open spots. So we have a very close community of family law attorneys in South Jersey.
Right. Well, we're small to begin with. I grew up in North Jersey, so just moving to this area, just knowing everyone so easily because we're so small, was a surprise initially. I'm going to go back to what you said, is you thought criminal law, prosecuting, those doors weren't opening. I am sure at the time there was frustration, or what am I doing wrong, and questioning. And then now there's this reality of it was meant to be. You're in the right place. You just didn't know it at the time that you were knocking on the wrong doors, correct?
As my clerkship ended, I thought to myself, what are my marketable skills? And I thought, I know how to run child support guidelines. I know how to, draft orders for family law. I know how to create parenting plans. And so I took the skills that I learned in my clerkship and decided to put my foot into the realm of family law. And 15 years later, it's working out pretty good.
So, did you like family law once you started doing it, or when you finished your clerkship, were you still trying to make the applications to the prosecutor's office?
By the time the clerkship was over, I knew that no prosecutor's offices were hiring whatsoever. I needed to leave that dead in the water and start fresh. And those student loans were coming out of forbearance. So it wasn't this like, oh, I'm meant to be in family law. It was like, oh crap, my bills are due. Let me go make some money because I don't want to be in default on my student loans.
I
So,
understand. Yes.
it was
So,
one
but
of
I
those like
was gonna,
things. It wasn't a very romantic, picture at the time. But I do think that looking back, there was this need that needed to be filled. I was there and ready, willing, and able to fill it. And years later, it just that clerkship pretty much like changed the trajectory of my whole life, if I'm going to say it.
right.
I would not have met my husband. I would have not been married. I would not have a stepson. Like my entire life changes honestly go back to accepting that clerkship.
So, Max Baker, there you
Judge
go. Um,
picked a girl out of Philly who had no real law background other than what I picked up at Rutgers and my clerkships and my internships, and took a little chance on the Eagles fan that showed up in his office that day.
did you go to a large law firm? What law firm did you go to? And again, what was your hours of working? What was your expectation when you started working? I know you said it was about the money initially. I could do this, I could make money.
Mm-hmm. And then I didn't. So I went to a small law firm and it was really just a husband and wife setup. And unfortunately, during my early months there, the husband fell ill with cancer. And that really shook up the whole family law firm. And not long after, I decided to go out on my own as a solo, as a ripe law school graduate. And I took what I had learned from that very short amount of time there and decided I wanted to do things a little bit differently. Like I didn't want to rely on the brick and mortar building. I had identified very early on in my law practice that technology was where it was at. And if I was able to meet with clients virtually, and back in 2010, that would have been, oh gosh, what was that? Skype. I was
I was
offering
about to
Skype.
ask, what platform did you use in
I
2010?
was using Skype to conduct virtual consultations and meetings with clients. And at that time, rolled out a Skype law clinic with Volunteer Lawyers for Justice up in North Jersey. I helped them get their Skype clinic up and running.
What's
So,
amazing is I don't think people understand how hard and how, whether it's confidence or belief in oneself, to literally hang up a shingle 1 year out of law school or shortly after a clerkship. Do you think that you had the confidence to do that because you were a little um, seasoned, meaning you didn't go from college to law school, you had a few years of work experience, or do you think that was innate in you? And I say this as someone who opened up my own law practice after practicing 22 years or so. I was a public defender. I worked with another attorney. I was a partner with another attorney. And even when I opened up my own law firm, I did it begrudgingly. I'm thrilled I did it. I love that I have my own law firm, but I was so married to that paycheck and not creating my own firm, but also own brand, own way of doing business. And I'm so impressed that you're saying in 2010, with 2 years of experience at most, 1 year clerkship, you not only hung your own shingle, as we say, you said, I'm going to do it in a way that really hasn't been done. So my question really is, well, one is kudos to you. And two, what gave you the confidence or that thought, I can definitely do this?
When you talk about having kind of this like blueprint lined up where, you knew what that would look like, I had already identified what I wanted to do out of law school, and it wasn't happening. So I wasn't just sitting back and waiting for, a prosecutor's office or a law firm to like give me the opportunity. Because when you are getting told we're riffing people, or we are not hiring people right now, or we'll hold on to your resume when you know it's going right in the trash can anyway. You, I mean, this is when so many people were being laid off. I mean, how do you even, in every ad and art in the newspaper or the law journal or online would say, oh, I want somebody with 3 to 5 years experience. I had 3 to 5 months of experience. Nobody was going to hire me. I mean, this was really kind of a matter of, I've got to make the best with what I have. And I can't sit back and wait for somebody to give me a job and give me money for showing up. I'm just going to have to go do it myself. To the point where I was like, well, if this doesn't work out for me, I can go back to teaching. I still have that degree. I have a double degree there. I can always go do this. I could go be a paralegal. I could do all of these things. I can take that background. I can use it. And I decided to put my effort into, let me find one client. Let me work on one case. So it wasn't like, oh, let me go find a space or put a letterhead. Let me find one client that I can help. And then from that one client, he was happy. So he told his friends. And then his friends called me. And then his friends told their friends. And then they called me. And so it went from 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, and exponentially grew so much that I can actually look back and think of my career almost like a family tree. Like there are these 3 branches from which all
I do
of
that
these other
too.
clients spring. So I can say, but for those like little seeds that were planted in the beginning, those people who knew I had like 1 year of experience as a clerkship, 3 months of experience as an attorney, and gave me that opportunity, and I made them happy. I got them a successful result. They felt heard. They felt understood. They felt like they had someone standing with them, fighting for them when they didn't think that was something that they would be able to do on their own. And
That's
I really didn't
great.
have a great plan. Like you're giving me so much credit, but like a lot of it is born out of necessity, because I like to have a car and I like to drive and I need to pay that car payment and I like to eat. So
So you didn't have a brick and mortar building at all from the beginning. You were working out of wherever
I
I
was working at
assume your home.
my
You were working out of
I was
where?
the original work from home employee. I was the original work remote first. That was me. I had one laptop. I had one inkjet printer. I had the New Jersey Rules of Court book. I had
So,
my cell phone. That was it.
so what's interesting about your analogy of a tree and branches is I also think of my clients and the referrals as branches of a tree. Um, I would turn my computer around so you could see it, but I think it'll like mess up the whole podcast. But to my right is literally a painting of a huge tree with leaves that are pink and black. And because I describe when people make referrals, that's that branch of the tree. I had a former colleague who became an administrative law judge and referred me all his cases. And I say that's that judge's branch when people call me, that's that branch of the tree. So I love the analogy. I relate to it completely. So my question to you is, you built it pretty much one client at a time as the branches began to bloom. I do know the answer, but it also became bigger or more than you expected it to be, or working? How much were you working? Being the attorney, the secretary, the paralegal, the receptionist, the marketer of
I
your
felt like I
own
was
firm.
working constantly, like, just because anytime the phone rang, like, that was business. I needed to pick it up. So if it was like Sunday night at 5, or if it was Monday morning at, 6:30 a.m., those calls were being taken. And sometimes I would even be like, "Hi, this is Kristin's secretary calling to confirm your appointment." Like, I would just be extra people. Um, you know, every single call that needed to be made was mine. And, fortunately, and for anybody who's listening to this who is a lawyer, you already know this. For people who are not, they don't teach us how to run a business in law school. Not a
No,
single.
not only do we not know how to run a business, they don't teach us marketing. They don't teach us anything regarding the tech. I literally say to my staff, when the printer stops working, I jokingly say, "Tag, you're it." They didn't teach me this in law school. And
That's fortunately something I picked up as a teacher. I was very good at that. And that's why I say that past experience as a teacher has served me very, very well. I can unjam any printer.
well, as a public defender, we did argue and fight and have to learn how to do it. But I just, at times now think I did not learn this in law school. So much that we didn't learn. We learned how to read rules and apply the law and make arguments regarding our cases are analogous or distinguishable from cases in front. But that's about it.
We understood where, like, underlining stops on before the punctuation or after the punctuation in a case site, and about, cases where there's trains and explosives, and none of that applies to family law, and none of that applies to, trust accounting. None of that applies to running invoices, what's billable, what's not billable. And I look back and I made a lot of mistakes, not in the trust accounting part, definitely not that part, but in the what's billable, what's not billable. No one told me, like, if I'm calling the court and I'm talking to someone, that's a bill. That's something I bill for. But I had to learn it the hard way. I had to learn it the wrong way, and eventually, found a couple attorneys I could talk to and ask some questions to without judgment and without any shame. And I now try to do that for other people. Eventually, I did end up getting a part-time paralegal, then brought her in full-time, then had some interns. Those were pretty cool. And then merged my little teeny tiny office with another firm. We had 2 locations. I unfortunately closed those doors in 2019. Fortunately, unfortunately, right before the world changed again. And then went to work for a larger firm out of Philly, brought my book of business there. And then as my work history would have it, I burned out horribly in 2023, like hit the wall hard, and stopped the big firm 50, 60-hour a week work, stopped working nights, stopped working weekends, started sleeping and eating again and having a life again. And now my life looks way different than being a robotic attorney who lives only to, draft pleadings and get people divorced.
So you say 50 to 60 hours a week.
Yes.
I think you're low on that.
I probably am.
I think running your own business and having clients, the similarity between criminal defense and family law is we are seeing clients that are in desperate need of guidance, legal representation, and we also end up being an emotional support system for them, whether we want to or not. There's a lot of hand-holding.
Absolutely.
So I have finally put a lot of hard boundaries on clients calling the office and not my cell phone in the last 2 years of my 6-year privately owned business of just law offices of Melissa Rosenblum. But I think when you say 50 to 60, I say, oh, my clients had my cell phone. They called and texted. I always picked up as well. I think it was more than 50 to 60 hours. So when you say you burnt out and you burnt out, how did you know? Were you in denial about it initially? What was occurring beforehand? Um, in some ways, in my mind, I'm thinking, you were one of the few people really able to shift, probably not difficult, to the pandemic. You were digital. Maybe you had moved to Zoom from Skype to Zoom already. So it wasn't a huge change. And then you're saying in 2023 is when you hit the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I have so many questions for you. When did you know? Did you see the wall coming? Were you trying to make the changes beforehand? Or did you hit the wall and say, oh my goodness, I can't continue? And what does it mean when you say hit the wall? Because I don't think that's a true mental health phrase.
No,
I
that's
think
not in the DSM-5. No, hit the wall.
no, not in DSM. But I always say that, you can shift gears. You use so many analogies that I use. You can shift gears in your career. There were times when I was young, 26, 27, I was going full throttle. Then I had kids. I kind of tapped on the brakes, taught at Rowan. Then I came back and I was kind of shifting back into work mode. Then there came a point where I went full throttle again.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't do it either. But I don't think I ever hit a wall. I think that there was a realization of my kids who had a lot of crisis over the years of their teenage years, knowing that I had to put them first and kind of hit the brakes again. So tell me the timeline leading up and sort of what you did and I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but did you have the support of the legal community, the courts, to do it in a way that you didn't have any backlash of your career, any violations or ethics issues or anything? There's so many things when people are struggling as an attorney that stop them from seeking help. So
Absolutely. Okay. So I think the best way to explain this is that when I started from like the very humble beginnings of like one client at a time and building it from a dining room table and a laptop, there was just this like hunger and this desire to build and grow. And that, being the eldest child, being an overachiever, being a type A perfectionist personality, that runs deep.
like many lawyers.
So many. And there's a sense that like if we're not busy, then like we don't have value. And that so much so that like when we are not busy, we feel guilty. If we rest, we feel guilty. We feel like we have to deserve rest. And through this journey that I've been on to become a better version of me and to become a healthier person and lawyer, I understand now. Wish I would have known then. And that's why I'll say it for all to hear. Rest is not a reward.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant coach that I hired to help me with my burnout, Kate Donovan, taught me rest is not a reward. Rest is what we need in order to do our most meaningful work. I thought I was doing somebody a favor by working on weekends and working nights and waking up early. But what I was doing was actually depriving myself of what I needed to be the very best, healthiest version of me, running on fumes, essentially, while telling all of my clients, make sure you take care of yourself during the divorce. Your children need you. They are looking to you. Make sure you sleep, make sure you eat, go do your meditation, go do your yoga, while I was running on fumes and a can of Coke and a sleeve of Oreos. Like, no. So resting, I didn't feel like I was entitled to rest. Like I had people who were calling me and texting me, and if they couldn't get through to me on call or text, then they would start Facebook messaging me. This happened on my wedding day.
So no
But
boundaries.
my boundaries were horrible, and then people just felt like, well, if I can't get her the three prior ways I tried to get her, let me try to get her through Instagram or Pinterest, because I still need to talk to my lawyer, regardless of the fact that she's getting married today. But then also to have kind of like this diluted sense of like pride, like I am so important that people need to reach me at all times. No, there are things that can't happen after, 4:30 in the afternoon. The courthouse is closed, people.
Right. So that's a hard realization for lawyers, I think, is our clients need us and there's an urgency for them, which creates an urgency for us. But the truth is, not everything is a fire that needs to be put out. And it took me, I am very clear with my clients that you can call the law firm after hours. There's an answering service. You can text the law firm after hours. I have a digital texting number for their file now, not my personal cell phone.
Right.
And if it's an emergency, I will call back. And then I clarify. An emergency is the police are at my door serving a warrant and I don't know what to do.
Right.
That's an emergency. You know what's not an emergency? I'm not sure what my court date and time is. I had clients call at 10 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock in the morning. When's my next court date? Or I want to talk about my case. Okay.
Right.
Call the office, leave a message, and we'll get back to you. Setting those boundaries of what emergencies are and what emergencies aren't. But the rest thing also is hitting the nail on the head, because you can't be effective if you're exhausted. And why do we think that we need to deserve that rest or earn it?
And I know I'm not the only one. Because I picked this up. Again, I wasn't working at a law firm where I was seeing other people pull all-nighters. I was on my own. But we see, like, even on Facebook, like colleagues being like, pulled another all-nighter. And when I see like my old Facebook memories pop up, I say, oh, there were the little breadcrumbs of burnout back then. Look at 2015 that I posted this. Look at 2019 when I said, oh, just another 18-hour day at the office. Like, those are the little breadcrumbs that get us there. Right.
Another Sunday or Saturday, worked all weekend.
Yeah. Or had 3 court hearings Christmas Eve. And thank I'm so thankful for the pandemic, because all the things that I like to do virtual now became like everybody doing it virtual. But the driving 2 hours round trip to have a 15-minute uncontested divorce hearing, that ended. And for that, I am so grateful. It helped my clients out. It helped me out. I was running myself into the ground, but I was running my cars into the ground. Like, I would never be able to lease. I was driving thousands of miles a month, like over 10,000 miles a month. I mean, it was just crazy. I was driving all over the state. I was eating the majority of my meals in the car, which is horrible. Since the pandemic, I've lost 50 pounds because I am not eating McDonald's between 2 courthouses to get there for a 1:30 hearing. I am not stopping at Wawa to get a breakfast burrito on my way to court in the morning. It's not happening. It's a healthier lifestyle. And so when people are eager to go back, I'm like, but please, I like being able to have my healthy smoothie every morning. I like being able to stop and get a glass of water and have access to a bathroom when that's not always the case if you're in a physical courthouse.
Correct. And what we learned is not everything needs to be in person. I'm going to say there's some value of it sometimes for what I do to be able to talk to a prosecutor face to face about the case.
Absolutely.
But municipal court, I would say, for the same reasons that you're saying, municipal court is mostly virtual. And thank goodness, because I represent people in all of South Jersey. I do not need to be driving to 3 to 4 courthouses in one day for traffic tickets that are, I'm not saying they're not good money coming in, but it's really not worth driving an hour for a traffic ticket.
Right.
Handling it virtually, though, um, is. So I totally agree with you that doing an uncontested divorce, 15 minutes on the record,
Right.
makes so much more sense.
And then,
And
yeah,
going into court when is necessary, and there are necessary times.
absolutely. Absolutely. I have no, and I think I mentioned earlier, like I now reside out of state. I fly out for hearings. If I have a hearing or I've had in-person mediation, I fly out. That's fine. I get to see my family. I get to, wear fancy shoes again. I get to wear a whole suit. And, but I get the best of both worlds. And not a single person has ever cried because they find out I live in a different state where, my husband lives. So that's great. Um, but,
How did you address? So I don't know. I know you said you hit the wall, you realized how much you were working.
yeah.
And what did that mean, hitting the wall? Did you?
Yeah, I guess what I'll go back to is, where I said there's those little breadcrumbs that were showing up, right? Around 2019, I was feeling signs of burnout then. So I was feeling very lethargic. I really started to feel fatigued. I started to recognize like I didn't have as much compassion as I was having earlier. They call that compassion fatigue.
Mm-hmm,
I started to feel like maybe what the work I was doing was not as relevant. And I started to identify that the job was overtaking my life, where I was waking up earlier, I was going to bed later, and by the time I got to a weekend, all I was doing was recovering from the work week. There was no value to me or to my family on the weekend. I was exhausted. I was sleeping. I
mm-hmm,
mean, I was, really just kind of going through those motions. And it was at that point where I said, I'm not happy running a law firm anymore. I'm not happy being the boss anymore. I want to just be a lawyer. I want to do the things that spark joy in me, Marie Kondo my life, so to speak, and just get
okay.
back to being lawyers. That's why I thought going to a firm where somebody else is doing the hiring and firing, someone else is doing the performance plans and making
Mm-hmm,
sure 401k gets taken care of. Someone else is, sending out the, insurance renewal premiums. That initially worked wonders to bring me out of that funk and to
mm-hmm,
get me back to feeling happy and fulfilled with what I was doing. But it also was a change from being the boss to being an employee.
yeah,
And there is a sense of freedom that comes with being your own boss. But it also, you have those kind of handcuffs attached to you. Like the whole office is relying on you. um, and
right.
that,
It's but nobody's also telling you you have to be at a certain location or in a certain room or FaceTime when
yeah,
you're the boss. And I have a lot of friends. My former partner is a judge. A lot of friends are judges now, and they were in private practice, and they say, I can't go get the manicure at 9 o'clock and stroll into my office at 10:30 and things like that when you're working for somebody else.
yeah. And I can tell you that I didn't feel like I was really reaping a lot of the benefits of like owning my own business where I was going for manicures. I probably was out of those times in life, I was probably taking care of myself less than I am now. Because again, I guess was in this mindset that I needed to deserve to go do those things.
Mm-hmm.
There was this like whole mindset, like I needed to earn those things. But really taking care of yourself is not something that you need to earn. You really just need to do it to be the best version of yourself and to be mentally and emotionally available and refilled and replenished for the emotional toll that this type of job can take. So, looking back, I feel like I owe myself an apology for how poorly I treated myself as
Mm-hmm.
myself as boss to employee me boss. So, um, but I just didn't feel happy, and I was kind of like, I'm just gonna try things differently and see if that works. And if I didn't like working at a firm, I'd go work for myself again. Did it once out of a dining room table and a laptop. By gosh, I'll do it again. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then the pandemic hit and things got really crazy. We know attorneys who slowed down and they were They got to Netflix and chill. I didn't get to Netflix and chill. There was no chilling. It was busier than ever. And all that time that I loathed that I spent in the car, and it was, driving this, that was quiet downtime where my brain could, recharge itself. All of that time became back in front of the laptop time. I was doing so many Zoom consults and meetings and hearings that I ended up with like laryngitis and couldn't talk within the
And
first
you
2 months.
and you probably did not set up buffer times between appointments,
No.
because I'm assuming that's the case. I have said to my staff, I understand that we do 30-minute appointments, but I mentally need to breathe between them before
Yes.
and um, and so I understand what you're saying. I will say that the only, and I hate to use the word benefit of the pandemic, because there's so much negative and around it, but because the courts were closed for the initial month, I was able to catch up on work. I didn't stop working. I had so many briefs, a little different area of law, so many briefs and so many things that I needed to file, that was the only benefit. I still went into the office. I was still working as much as I was prior. But the
Yeah, one
emotional
of the
toll of
first things
back to back. Oh, I'm
Yeah, one of
sorry,
the
what?
first things I did was set up a home office that was practically identical to what I had, because everybody's talking about, "Oh, well, I was setting up at the kitchen table or I was doing this," and it's, well, you're of course you're not gonna be able to get things done. You've got, your dishwasher running over here, and you got the dog barking over here, and your Amazon packages being delivered. Right now, the setup that I have in my home office is as fantastic as anyone else's, and I've got multiple screens, printers, and if you set it up and this is your space and you close that door, I might as well be at my old office in Linwood, because it's my mentality goes right there. This is my workplace. I'm now in my work gear. And when I go out that door, then I'm at home. But right now I'm in the office.
Right. So with the back to back meetings, and I don't know if this is true, was the divorce rate higher during the pandemic or right after?
I believe that, I don't know if we statistically have stuff on it, but I know for myself that was the most new cases for divorce I had ever had in a 365-day span. And what I was seeing also were people who are not married for a very long time at all, who them being under the same roof with that person that you married not all that long ago, but you had never spent that many consecutive hours with them in your entire dating, engaged, married life. Those ones were self-combusting fast.
Mm-hmm.
That, with the crazy housing market that was going on, it was just absolute other chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot going on there. We had a lot of parents who were withholding children because they were getting advice, either from the government or direction from an attorney, or their other co-parent was sick with COVID. We had so many things going on. And that, again, this led me down that burnout path because I was constantly working. I was constantly accessible. I was, being asked to appear on podcasts to talk about, like, how do we get through the holidays with kids in the pandemic and things like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
kept on saying yes to everything because it was all very, exciting and felt important. And moving down the line, I started to realize I need help. I need support. I need a really positive paralegal. I could use maybe like a baby associate to help out because the volume was so high. I think in the year prior to my burnout, I think I originated something like $700,000 in like
Mm-hmm.
divorces. That's an obscene amount of time.
For
The
another
time,
law firm, right?
yeah,
Working
yeah.
for another law firm.
Hmm.
A lot.
And then I billed like 600K on top of it. It was just and that's not what I earned. That's what I made them. But the amount of time I was spending on these, I really needed help.
Mm-hmm.
I finally reached that point where I was like, I need to delegate. Like, I'm tired of, I'm a type A. I want to do everything myself, but I can't physically and mentally do everything myself. I need to delegate out, but there was no one to delegate to. And so hours of my day, I would put on my paralegal hat and do paralegal stuff, or my secretarial hat and do secretarial stuff.
Mhm.
And then sometimes after 5, when I was getting to do the lawyer stuff. And it was
Mhm.
just, I wasn't able to keep up. I was spinning my wheels every weekend. I was working just so that I could potentially not have 12-hour days the next week. And by the end of that year, it was like something like almost 1,900 billed hours. Plus, I am a matrimonial settlement panelist in 5 different counties. I
Mhm.
do pro bono work through South Jersey Legal Services. It just, when I counted up the hours, you're right. It probably was like something like 5,000 hours or something. It was intense. And I thought, what have I done this year other than work?
Worked.
I would sit down at dinner and I would only have cases going through my head. And then after dinner, I wouldn't remember what I even ate because I was like shoving it in my mouth so I could get back to my office.
Ah,
It just started to take over every aspect of my life. And, you know, the theory that was being kind of pushed out on us as attorneys was we need to be available to our clients at all times. This is a stressful time for them. I never really got to process what was even going on in our society at that time. Like, we had a global pandemic and it barely made like a blip.
right. It didn't change your life in the sense of giving you more perspective on yourself at the time. You were
Yeah.
just working. So, you know, 365 days of this crazy work running on a work wheel.
Ooh, hamster wheel for sure. Yeah.
Then
And
what happened and how did you make the shift?
so I want to say mid 2022, the words burnout came out of my mouth and I was like, I'm burning out. I need help. I need support. Get me the support or there's not going to be anything left to give. And sure enough, my words were hit the mark. By December of that year, I started to feel very weird symptoms. Like I stopped sleeping through the night. I became like a toddler. Like I
Mhm.
would wake up at like every 2-hour increments. And
Ah,
then the mind would start going about, oh, these equitable distribution factors and what this opposing counsel said in their nasty, snarky letter to me. And it would just, so, then all of a sudden I would forget to eat meals. Like, who forgets to eat? I mean, that's just crazy. I always
mhm.
used to hear about people who forgot to eat, and I thought those people are dumb. But I was so
Or they're
stressed. I had
lying. How do you forget to
they're
eat?
lying, right? They're just scarfing down food. I would get to about 4 o'clock and be like, "Oh, I have such a headache," and I'd be like, "What did I have for breakfast? Oh shit, I had coffee. What did I have for lunch? Oh wait, I had a conference call and a hearing at lunch. I had nothing." I was like,
Mhm.
"This is super not healthy." So I started meeting with a therapist, started calendaring lunch and breakfast.
Uh-huh.
Fast forward to December, I just like randomly started bursting out into tears
Mm.
when I was in my physical office in New Jersey and couldn't stop crying.
Mhm.
And I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating. I started working with a therapist. They were like, "You are under intense stress. You can only operate at that fight or flight type of mentality for so long before you will crash and burn." And
Mhm.
so they were like, "We recommend you not work on weekends." That didn't really work great because then you end up with a trial or something. But ultimately, I was like, 2023 is my year. I'm going to make those changes. And it got worse and worse. And then I started having memory lapse. And I started recording all of my meetings and taking detailed notes for every single meeting because about 2 days later, I would forget exactly what had
Mhm.
happened. It was terrifying. Like, my entire career is built on remembering case law and remembering statutes and remembering facts and, you know, applying those facts to the law. And I thought something is really, really wrong. So again, meeting with the doctors, they decided they wanted to put me out on medical leave. They wanted me to like take a mental health break. I argued with them and told them I had a trial and I couldn't do it. And I negotiated my leave with my doctors. This is crazy. This is crazy.
It's a lawyer thing to do. You just said, I negotiated my leave.
Because that person and their trial was more important than despite the fact that I was dropping pounds, like I looked emaciated. I looked like a skeleton. I had the darkest circles under my eyes. I had no concealer was working whatsoever. I was unhealthy. I look back at those pictures and I think not a single person stopped and said, "Are you okay? You don't look okay." And then after the fact, if I show them, they go, "Oh my God, you look gray. You look sick." But I also was looking at myself every morning and it happened so slowly, I hadn't noticed it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did take that break, I created those first boundaries there. No, if something happens at work, you can't call me. I am on a medical leave. You can figure it out. You all are lawyers too. You have
When
long.
you were on a medical leave,
Mm-hmm.
aside from having a doctor's note, did you talk to assignment judges or presiding judges? Did you provide them the information, or did you, um, how formal or informal? Because I ask you this,
Mm-hmm.
I sit on the Wellness Committee, the Supreme Court Wellness Committee, and there is a back and forth on the committee regarding whether there should be what we call a pause program. How do we address individuals that truly need the medical leave, or I like to call it the pause.
Mm-hmm.
Something is
I like
going on personally
Mm-hmm.
that you
I
need
like
to
the
deal
pause.
with.
The answer is yes. We absolutely should have one. And here's the thing. If we don't hit pause, our body will hit pause for us. And that's what happened with me in February. My body hit pause. I wanted to push
Mhm.
it back longer and longer, but my body was like, you need to take a break now. You can't go anymore. And we unfortunately are in a career where like there's a temporary pause, which is me going on medical leave, and there are people who are hitting permanent pause. And those are the circumstances that are most scary because we've honestly we've let our colleagues down. The same way that I say, if somebody doesn't look right or somebody doesn't sound right, I pick up the phone and I talk to them and I ask, "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to support you? Can I help you find
Mhm.
resources?" Um, but I was very nervous about initially disclosing how much was I going to disclose? How much was I going to say? Because my doctors wouldn't even give me a definite amount of time I'd be out for. So I couldn't definitively say I'm going to be out for 90 days. I was only granted 30 on the first, and they said, we'll reevaluate after 30 and see where you are. So when I initially talked to my bosses or my leadership at where the firm I was at, it was like, well, when will you be back? I was like, I don't know. I don't get to make that call. Doctors, I'm going to work with my doctors to make sure I'm healthy. Like the way I feel right now is not good. I want to feel better. I want to feel healthier. I want to be in a good condition to be meeting with judges and clients. And fortunately, I didn't do anything that would have been a violation of any of our ethical rules. I did not let any cases fall to the wayside. That's because I was working constantly, but I
Right.
didn't I didn't go on leave because I had messed up something. I went on leave because I was afraid to mess up something.
So let me ask you this. Do you think the fact that you were with a law firm at the time it was occurring allowed you to go on medical leave because there were people to step in? Because that's
Yes.
the second issue, that the majority of attorneys in New Jersey are solo practitioners or small law firms, and that seems to be the greatest concern. So you
Yes.
worked at a law firm.
Like if you're on your own, you don't get the luxury or liberty to say it's not okay for me to go into court today. And maybe if we did have like a pause program, there could be attorneys who say, you can put me on this list. I will be a step in or a support to swoop in if somebody's in there. Like, I'm not going to take their case to completion, but I'll be there to make sure it doesn't sink during that time.
Mhm.
I'll be there to make
Right.
sure that case information statement is getting done. I'm not bringing their case to trial for them, but there's no way you're prepping for a trial and you're also actively, deeply committed to working on your mental health at the same time. Like
Right.
those are two completely opposite goals.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the reaction I got when I did disclose to one judge, because he was like, "I'm bringing you back next week for another hearing." Great, great judge. Can we talk? Yeah, I'm not going to be here next week or the week after. I'm going to go out on leave. He was so kind about it, and I was taken back because I was really nervous to say it. But at that point, another judge reached out and said that they were glad to hear that I was taking care of myself. And I thought, this is the reaction we need. This is the
And
reaction that we all deserve.
and the reality is, I find that when you're truthful with judges, whether it's your own personal mental health, or for me, I had a child in crisis for a little bit of time. And I always like to say, when I say that, it's about 7 years later, my child is thriving in college and doing really well, but had some severe mental health issues as the teen years approached. And I was literally running out of court to go to hospitals. And either I ran out of court and never confided and shared what was going on and looked possibly irresponsible or lazy or unprepared, or I went up to the bar of the court, and I did that with the judges in criminal court that I appeared in front of most, and took and said, "I am so sorry, but this child, this is what's going on." And all of them said, "You need to do what's best for you and your child right now."
Amazing.
With the mental health. And so I I think people are so scared of the ethics that they're scared to be truthful, especially when it's their own. And I'm so happy. I'm assuming that it is in one of the counties I practice in. We practice in the same counties. To hear that you were truthful and open with the judge, and that they supported that. Instead, I think that if you were vague and just saying, "I'm not available," that they would have pushed back more than being honest with them.
And I have a friend who recently, when told that they were picking dates like a month out, said that they were going to be out of the office during that time, and they were pushed for more details. And I think that we have to assess what we can do to support attorneys in letting judges that there's a break or a pause that is needed. And maybe I don't need to give you every intricate detail about what that is, but just trust that as a professional that's been in this career, that has taken, like an oath and has to abide by certain ethical and moral guidelines, that I'm not going to Vegas for a month. I'm going to take a little pause, and maybe it's therapy, or maybe it's meditation, or maybe it's a combination of yoga and sleep or
Right.
something. But if you need a 30-day pause to get your head together, then there shouldn't be an inquisition about it, so long as you're not harming someone. And I also think that there's very few circumstances I can think of off the top of my head where a family law case is going to be so demolished by a postponement of 30 days. We have postponements all the time.
Right.
All the time.
And so
30 days to
sometimes,
get my head on straight is not going to
right.
mess up the judge's calendar all that much.
So I think saying it's, "Your Honor, it's personal," or "I will not be available for 30 days. And if they push to say sidebar approach and say it's personal, and I'm not comfortable putting it on the record and not comfortable in front of my clients, I think that the problem is that the attorneys that the judges perceive are hardworking attorneys will get that extension without any pushback. But unfortunately, the attorneys were the judges, whether it's a true perception or a personality perception or that don't feel that those lawyers are hardworking, or they're going to be denied, and the judges will push back. That's why it's almost better to have a policy to be able to protect
Yeah.
everyone, especially not everyone has the connections or the relationships to make those calls.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it can't be just because you have a good relationship with these judges in this county, or I was a former bar president of Atlantic County, so I'm getting a beneficial courtesy that not every attorney in the county should get. And then in the state, that's really the issue, you know.
Think about this too. When you talk about, like who we are and whether these judges recognize us, family law is a revolving door in most counties in this state of New Jersey. We have been very fortunate. We have had several of the family law judges in Atlantic County have been on the bench for years now, and that is such a benefit because we've been able to develop that rapport with them. But historically, I mean, I can say off the top of my head, Camden County, they rotate their judges like every 2 years, just as a matter of their own process and procedure. So despite the fact that I've been in Camden County for 14 years now, I may not know these judges. But I've been in that building longer than they have.
Right.
The other thing to keep in mind too is that even on things as simple as, my stepson's graduation or your children's, you have to go pick them up and move them in and out of college. Like those are things that are on our calendars well ahead of time. And we'll have a judge pick a date. And you say, I'm not available, judge. Well, why not? Do you want to move my kid in? You can take the U-Haul. I'll stay here.
I will tell you, it's the one thing Kristin, I do it. When I say I'm not available, and if I get I'll say I'm moving my kids into college. When my kids were younger and I was given trial dates or court dates the day after Labor Day or the 2 days after, even if I didn't have their calendar, I would say I'm not available. And they would say, you're not available? Do you have a planned vacation? And I would say, no, but that is either the first or second day of school for my kids and I will be there for them. Halloween. Nope. Your Honor, I know that the parade for my kids' school is that day. I will be attending it. It is one thing that I was very clear on when my kids were younger, to set the boundaries. But I don't know if everyone's as forthright as I am.
Here's the other thing. Other states have figured this out. We haven't yet. And in Georgia, you can file what's called a notice of unavailability. So if you get your kid's calendar and you know when the parent-teacher conferences is, you log them into a system, like our court system. We use JEDS or we use eCourts. In that regard, then the judges don't get frustrated and go, well, now I'm trying to work around this person's schedule and that person's schedule. It's like, well, we're allowed to say when we're not available too. It seems like we're and this is what also feeds into that burnout. Now the judge called me on the carpet. I need to be available on that date, or scrambling to fit multiple things on one day. How many times we've had to be in two places at once.
Right. And I will tell you, I'm so sorry. I have two things and I have to interrupt. One is municipal court's the hardest court to get when you have multiple things in Superior Municipal Court. They push back, which is sort of funny. Kristin, I am apologizing. I am just called in by a judge that I have to appear for a virtual hearing on. So I know we're not finished with this. Okay. So I'm going to send you additional dates so we can do a part 2 and you can sort of, because I think what's best about your story is how you took care of yourself and now you're thriving even more as an attorney. And I think you're happier because I see it.
And we want us to do better for ourselves and our colleagues. I want us to treat each other better. And I want to talk about how we can be better to each other.
That would be great. Thank you so much for your time.
Welcome. Good luck today. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, Tom.